Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Good morning, everybody. So here we have Dr. David Watson. Dr. Watson's a founder and certified clinical trial investigator of Alzheimer's Research and Treatment Center and is located in Lake Worth. So thank you for coming to the show, Dr. Watson.
You're quite welcome.
I'll bet you're in great demand now because of the subject that you are dealing with. And I just want to know a little bit about you. Have you always been dealing with Alzheimer's problems?
Well, I actually appreciate you asking that because to me, what I've decided to do for my career is extremely personal. I first became interested in this about 25 years ago when my grandmother, who helped raise me, was afflicted with this disease. And I volunteered to be the caregiver. And as you know, being a caregiver is, 24/7 and exhausting. And that was a long, winding road. So I learned about this disease from being a caregiver, and subsequently I've lost several other family members to this disease. So for me, I really felt it was my calling to do whatever I could to try and find a cure and prevent this devastating disease.
That's a great comment. I mean, I think I've interviewed a lot of people, and when caregiving, they're always talking about it. But to have had a grandmother, and you were pretty young when you were subjected to doing it.
I was in my early 20s, and and at the time, the blessing part about that was I actually had the energy that's required to do the caregiver roles because it's quite exhausting to do. And this is one of the reasons why this disease, and we have these statistics that 65% of caregivers unfortunately pass before the subjects, before the patients. It's because there's so much involved and it's so exhausting that we neglect to take care of ourselves. So that it gave me the energy to survive that, but it also directed my career where what I thought I was going to do, then I made a sharp right turn and dedicated my career to a very specific field in trying to help various pharmaceutical companies develop new medications that would ultimately lead to a cure for this disease and prevent it altogether.
Those are magic words, and we're all looking for that. And everyone's working hard. They're trying to raise funds, and thank goodness pharmaceutical companies have that high on their list, because when I first became a gerontologist, and I remember the 36-hour, the book, 36 Hours, I said, what could that be? Well, my mother also had end-stage Alzheimer's. Actually, she had the Lewy body type. And I was, as much as I've been in this field, it was very strange for me too. And so it takes a lot of knowledge, and it takes people like you who are really investigating. And I watched you speak at the Alzheimer Community Care Benefit Program last year. And I think people were so thrilled that you were inviting people into clinical studies.
Yeah, it's a new avenue because historically, we've always viewed clinical research as kind of this guinea pig science, and we're not really sure what it means outside of the the college realm, so to speak. But clinical research is something certainly where we're progressing, and what we're discussing today is one word really would define it, and that's hope. Because right now we have a devastating disease that robs our independence and takes away the quality of our life. And clinical research specifically for Alzheimer's disease, and yes, we're trying to make headway and slow down and halt the progression of the disease. But more importantly, with some of these advancements, we've progressed to the point that clinical research right now in our backyard is we're able to not only diagnose the disease ahead of time, determine who's at an increased risk, because this is the number one aging question, will I get Alzheimer's disease? And most of the time the answer is I don't want to know unless you can do something about it. So through research, we finally have, some advancements that science has caught up to our ability to diagnose. And now we have current theories that are designed to identify the disease process before it takes hold in a couple of stages that are very early on that we would call mild cognitive impairment, which is in many times almost an extension to the natural aging course. And we can actually initiate these potentially disease-modifying treatments in hopes that it arrests the disease really before it starts.
I love, all these words are just music to my ears, because I remember, and I'm sure you were in this field, when someone said, well, it's Alzheimer's. Whatever it was, they said it was Alzheimer's. It used to be, what they call it, some other kind of a word before.
Senility and general dementia.
And they just said there was nothing you can do about it. And only when you die can we see if you had Alzheimer's. I mean,
which is great, and I'm happy to schedule an autopsy for you, but I don't think you'll show up to that appointment. So the reality is, yes, we can always determine what happened in hindsight when a person is deceased, and that's not the goal of this. The goal of this is to appropriately and correctly identify the disease process now when a patient is suffering from it, but more importantly, to identify those where the process is not afflicting them yet. They're not really having any symptoms, but we're able to positively identify the disease process has begun. And that's a concept that is really new, and we kind of refer to it as what we call a prodromal disease state.
Interesting. I hadn't heard of that word before. I bet one day you keep doing this, you'll get a Nobel Prize.
Well, I just would like to find a cure because ultimately I know that I'm at risk. So I have a simple goal, and that's to get some medications on the market that are effective. And, any of the other accolades, they can pass those along. But thank you, though.
Well, let's go back to something you said. So actually, you are seeing results. You are seeing people who you're dealing with in an early stage, and you're able to keep it in that area. Is that what you're working on right now?
That's the whole goal with these new medications and the new theories are to appropriately and correctly identify an early disease state before a person clinically has Alzheimer's disease. So we're really talking about the aging population, generally over the age of 50, then we start to get concerned. Maybe they're having some mild symptoms, which can be part of the aging process, but also may be warning signs for maybe something else going on, such as word finding difficulty, finding the name of someone in conversation, maybe misplacing your glasses or keys, but then you find them, or maybe walking into the kitchen and then kind of scratching your head going, what'd I come in here for? These are normal things, but at the same time, when we collect those and then we can add in some biological evidence on what's going on, sometimes we can determine that those are indeed warning signs and the first signs of something to come. And then we can intervene with these medications, which are designed to slow down and halt the process. So the science behind them is spectacular.
I'm glad to hear that. As a matter of fact, I remember having, and I can't remember his name right now, but he's the first person that he wrote a book, The Healing Brain or something, and it was about neuroplasticity, which was probably, he was on my radio show probably 8 to 10 years ago. And that was a whole new thing about how that the brain, really can correct some things. You just move to another place in it. I know you're shaking your head and you know all about that.
Yeah. I mean, it is fascinating.
New,
and we see a lot of that with different types of dementia, like a vascular type of dementia. If you think about it, when an individual has a stroke, for example, and they lose some of their abilities, and then the brain does have cortical reserve, and it is very neuroplastic, where we can then switch it to, and we can compensate. We may lose ability, but then we have a period of time that we can train the brain to do other stuff. Unfortunately, with Alzheimer's disease, we have this very slow progressive problem, and our brain just cannot keep up with it. And unfortunately, without some of these advancements really intervening at a very early time frame, an individual, we know the clinical outcome. Unfortunately, the brain, no matter how many exercises we do, no matter how much cognitive stimulation, no matter how much relaxation, unfortunately, disease marches on.
I'm glad you brought that up because I know there are all sorts of brain games now you can buy. I mean, Luminosity, I'm not giving them, I haven't even done that, but it's really out there now all the time. You see this on television, you hear it on the radio, that people are supposed to be getting their brain moving forward faster now and really watching it so that they won't get Alzheimer's. And so you're saying that's not probably going to...
Well, I think it's a very good idea to do all of these prevention strategies, whether it's cognitive stimulation definitely is one of them, and you can get it in many ways. You can get it from these, computer games such as Luminosity. You can get it from listening to this show, for example, because we're learning something new. We can get it from reading books, watching game shows, but actively participating, doing Sudoku, crossword puzzles. The only caveat that I would give is if, for example, your spouse likes Sudoku and you don't, and your spouse is telling you, well, you have to do this because it's very good for your brain, if it's creating a lot of stress for you, it's not good because that stress is overriding any benefit and could actually make you worse. So find something that stimulates your brain that you enjoy.
Yeah, that's very good advice. That's right. We do know we have families like that. So, okay, we won't talk about that anymore. But what I want to do is there's a study called E2609. What is that?
Yeah, it's one of the brand new spectacular studies that are out. It's a pharmaceutical company has developed a medication that they're testing. It is based upon, first off, biomarker evidence. So we're looking for individuals who are at this at-risk category, who would have what we would call a mild cognitive impairment. It's something that is common during the aging process. So if we're starting to have a little bit of concerns, difficulty remembering names in conversation, misplacing some things, we're not talking about huge symptoms. We're talking about a lot of individuals would actually qualify for something like this to see, is this normal for them and it's a normal part of aging, or is this the beginning stages of something yet to come? And then we can get evidence through a PET scan using a tracer. So it's a type of CAT scan where we can inject a tracer that will actually stain the fundamental problem in Alzheimer's disease, which is called beta amyloid. So if we can detect that before a person clinically has the disease, then they are permitted to participate in this research trial testing a medication that in theory is designed to prevent that protein from going into the brain altogether. So it's quite fascinating and a huge leap in science, not only from a diagnostic standpoint, but from a treatment standpoint.
So if we have listeners that would like to participate in this, I'd like to give them your phone number. May I do that? Because it is open for people, and you come and you look through the participants or the people who are interested, and I know you have, sure, qualifying ways. But the phone number to call for Dr. Watson's research is 561-209-2400. That's 561-209-2400, or you can go to the website, which is researchalz.com, researchalz.com. Well, tell us if someone does call you, how do you know if they qualify?
Yeah, well, first off, our center is a little bit unique that there's no private practice, so there's no referrals, there's no insurance required. So we're really looking for someone that is just ultimately concerned about their memory, and they want to either establish a baseline and or see what's going on if they're concerned about problems, or maybe we get referrals from their treating physicians that want to do anything they can to try and prevent or slow down a process. So an individual will come in, it's voluntary, of course. We'll do brief memory testing. They'll spend about 90 minutes one-on-one time with myself or another doctor in the office to really get to know them. We like for them to come if they live with someone, we like for them to come with that individual because they can help relay some of the information which may not be remembered at the time. So we spend a lot of time with them, and then based upon that information, we'll get a general feeling of whether or not there is some concern and how to go forward. And if they decide to go forward, we bring them back at a different time for very formal evaluation for a research trial where a consent form is presented and explained. It's a very diligent process to make sure that the appropriate person enters into a trial, but also that we make sure that there's no contraindications with ongoing medications, that they qualify and they could benefit from it. And if they qualify and go in, it's wonderful. And there is one other thing I wanted to mention regarding a lot of times individuals may want to see where their memory's at before they come in. And this particular trial, actually, it's the first time I've actually seen that they actually have a website that individuals can go on, very similar to like a Lumosity, where they can go on and they can complete a memory test battery to see whether or not their deficits are what we would call normal aging or mild cognitive impairment. Now, we do it in our office, of course, and it's very informal, non-threatening. We have a cup of coffee, we sit down, and most individuals absolutely adore it. But they can do it from their home in their pajamas, so to speak, by going onto the website and taking the memory test. It takes about a half hour to complete. It's not for my center directly, but it covers for this E2609 trial, and if they are showing some deficits, then they can click on any center. My center happens to be in Palm Beach and Lake Worth, right off the turnpike, and is very convenient. But there are other centers in South Florida that may be closer to them that they can click on and see. And the website for that is research.
Als.com?
No, it's
do I have something else I haven't seen? Okay,
it is.
There must be another one here.
It's researchformemoryloss.com.
Okay, good. So once they meet you, they're going to go to you. I can tell you because I've seen and I've heard you, and it's Dr. David Watson, and he is the founder and certified clinical trial investigator of Alzheimer's Research and Treatment Center in Lake Worth. And remember, he started this because of his grandmother, and that's so beautiful. And that does happen. I've spoken to a lot of doctors on my shows for the last 25 years, and I always ask them, why did you get interested in this? And it's, well, either this happened or my father did this or I had this happen. And sometimes they switch specialties because people they like to hear that about doctors. You know, sometimes doctors are up in this pedestal and they don't know how you even eat or sleep or what.
Yeah, and it is important to have that personal touch and connection when a loved one comes in and they're concerned. I've been through it several times. I know it. I've been doing this for 20-something years now. So I've not only diagnosed but treated, thousands of individuals. But at the same time, because I'm in the clinical research realm, I provided that help and hope for so many individuals. So this is purely research. Definitely is the way of the future. And I do think in the very near future, we will have medications that not only can treat Alzheimer's disease, but hopefully can prevent it altogether.
And as you were saying that, I was thinking that many people with Alzheimer's have Parkinson's. There are other neural diseases, aren't they, attached?
There are many other symptoms that you can have that overlap, which make it very, very difficult. This beta amyloid in Alzheimer's disease many times is kind of the catch-all. It is the most common type of dementia and occurs probably in 70 to 80% of the cases over the age of 65. So most of the time, it is a dementia of the probable Alzheimer's type, and it also can overlap concurrently with other types of illnesses, such as traumatic brain injury. And you can have a brain injury where you can have damage, or you can have a vascular dementia to a stroke, and then this protein also starts. And it's just very sad when any dementia takes place, but I truly feel that Alzheimer's disease is something through pharmaceutical research, through the advancements we have in being able to detect it earlier, and not having to wait till the autopsy anymore. We can detect it in individuals, find out risk factors, and then with these new classes of drugs, like a BACE inhibitor, which is this trial, which is designed to prevent this beta amyloid from going into the brain. So how wonderful would that be if we can shut down that system? So, or we have other medications that can dissolve the protein from the brain once it's there. So the research is really spectacular, and finally to the point where it's no longer suspect, but we really have true hope in it. And we are starting to see some difference in our subjects who are completing these trials, 18 months in duration, that the results show that they're completely stable. So we're very hopeful that these medications will continue to advance through the research realm and then hopefully get marketed and approved. So, the millions of individuals that suffer from this have access to it.
Well, when it works, would you please put in my 2 cents about name? We should name it Hope.
Absolutely.
They name these medications crazy names, but this is, and I have to just repeat this again. When I saw you speak at the Alzheimer's Community Care program and symposium that they had, you were the only one that spoke where afterwards people were just jumping up out of their seats to run to you to try to get into this program. Not only are you an extraordinary speaker, but you have something that seems like it's substantial, that you really, the way you're talking today, it is full of hope.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, without hope, this would be a really, really sad, depressing illness. But it's not that way anymore. It's tough for me to say that for loved ones going through this, but we're really starting to see some differences. And, I've been doing this research for Alzheimer's for about 25 years now. And finally, and I've tested over 300 compounds, and the medications are truly, the theory behind them is that they're modifying the course of the disease. And we're really starting to see that. So honestly, I've always said that, we can say that this is, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I like to give the analogy that we can not only see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there's enough light coming through that we can see what we're doing right in front of us that we're working on. That's how we know we're really getting close.
Now we have to call it Dr. Watson's supplement.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I would.
You worked very hard on this, and it's wonderful to hear about your dedication. I know that I've dealt with the people up at Scripps Research, and there are a lot of other people trying to do this, but it sounds like the difference is they're working on little mice and little butterflies and little, things, but you all have the people coming in there. So you get to see them, you're seeing the results. Now, what happens if someone comes in and they have a little bit more than mild? You're not going to take them. Is this just for mild?
No, absolutely not.
Oh.
This particular trial is for mild individuals and individuals already afflicted with the disease. So whether they're on standard of care treatment like the Aricept, Exelon, Razidine, or Namenda or not, they don't have to be on, but if they're on, it's fine. They can be on standard of care, and this is for individuals who ultimately we would like to find some way to catch this as early on as possible. But there are many individuals, almost 50,000 in Palm Beach County alone, afflicted with this disease. And, this particular trial, as well as other trials, are absolutely geared towards helping those individuals first. Those are the ones in the trench right now. But more importantly, we have another 100,000 that are over the age of 65 that are asking themselves every day, are these signs? Am I starting to have trouble that are just dismissed by their family or by them themselves or local physicians? But maybe we can identify something early on. So if you have the disease or you're just concerned, there's no harm in coming in. It's your time and my time we invest to establish a baseline and hopefully some answers.
And you said this is free.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love this. Oh, this is a great show. Okay, so let's do this again. You can call 561-209-2400. That's 561-209-2400, or go to their website, which is researchalz.com. And my guest is Dr. David Watson, and he's actually, as he said, he's participated in over 300 clinical trials for the treatment or prevention of Alzheimer's disease over the past 20 years, and he's actually considered one of the top leaders in this field. So you're a certified clinical trial investigator, and that's, I'm sure there are a lot of other people talking about this, but it must have taken you a lot of classes, a lot of courses, a lot of investigation to reach that epitome.
Yeah, there are very few certified trial investigators. If you're going to see someone, you definitely want them to be board certified. You want someone that has this specialty, not, kind of dabbling in it. You really want to see the best. You want to see someone that's committed, passionate about it, that takes the time to meet with you. That's why our evaluation process is almost always 90 to 120 minutes. The first impression is the most important, and that's when I gather the information. I don't want to rush through a process. I want to be able to determine the subtle nuances of normal aging and mild cognitive impairment. It's a delicate balance to try and figure out. We can take some memory tests, like the one I mentioned online, that kind of give you a little ballpark on how you're scoring, but ultimately, it's more than just a memory test. It's seeing a specialist that has expertise in it, that's willing to listen, that's willing to help you identify what's going on, and then ultimately on the back end is partnering with pharmaceutical companies to help test these medications to hopefully find a cure for this and do something about it now.
There are a lot of tricks that people use to remember things, right? And I've known people with Alzheimer's where you really can't tell that they have anything going because they've got all these little things that they do, but they can't get by you, can they?
Generally speaking, no. And when we introduce, these biomarkers that give us biological evidence, it becomes extremely clear. We know everything that's going on, which is only to the patient's benefit because, again, through clinical research, there's something we can do about it now.
Dottie Carson has been a longtime friend of mine. She's been on my radio show probably the last 15 years, on and off, because she was marketing other things. And I'll never forget, she was on my show. And I remember she was working with the Alzheimer's Association. She, of course, worked with Alzheimer's Community Care. And all of a sudden, she just told me one day, she says, I just can't do it anymore. And I said, why? And she said, and she didn't answer me. And then she was on my radio show, and she announced at that time that she had the beginning stages of Alzheimer's disease. But what I admire about her, and I know you're working with her, and probably you've helped her, there's certain things she can do. Like I would say, okay, when you come on the show, just let's talk. She said, no, I have to write things down. And so she's figured out a way that she can keep going without it, I guess, the deficit part for her and making that so impossible for her to do anything.
Right. There's, absolutely, just because you have a diagnosis or you're having trouble with your short-term memory, it doesn't mean you throw in the towel. You fight, and there are tricks. There are things that you can do. There are things that you can be taught that absolutely can make a difference to improve the quality of your life, as well as hopefully continue with your activities of daily living as much as possible. Because ultimately, if we can stretch this out, and it's a 10-year course of the disease typically, and if we can stretch this out to 30 years, who cares? We're ultimately going to pass from something else. We just want to be able to enjoy our life. We've worked hard to get to retirement. We don't want to have this disease. We want to do everything we can to maintain control of our faculty.
Well, that's wonderful. I have so many things I want to talk to you about. You have to promise to come back because this is just wonderful to have you on the show, and I'm just going to refer so many people to you. Thank you so much again.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.